I'm Danny Flexen. Welcome to the latest edition of Seconds Out Flexpectations. We're here every Thursday, 4:30 p.m. to preview the boxing action of the weekend to come. And while there are other fights taking place this weekend, among them Liam Smith and John Doherty going for glory out in Russia tonight, and Kieran Conway, Northampton's very own, fighting Suleiman Sissoko on the undercard of the big show from Texas. The one that we're all really looking forward to, I imagine, is Billy Joe Saunders and Canelo super middleweight unification contest. Unbeaten British fighter in Saunders, who's been wanting the Canelo fight for years. It's been talked about since his days with Frank Warren. He's now with Matchroom, and it's finally over the line. Matchroom and DAZN did a 2-fight deal with Canelo that encompassed them broadcasting and promoting his gimme, I think you could say, with Avni Yildirim back in January, I think it was, maybe February. And it led to this being the second fight of the deal, not a gimme by any stretch of the imagination, against two-weight world champion in Saunders, who comes in as the reigning WBO super middleweight king. Canelo has got the WBC crown, of course, as well as the Super WBA. The only other major belt in the division is held by Caleb Plant. A lot of people already speculating that Canelo will hope to fight Plant in September, the second of those two memorable Mexican holiday weekends that he likes to fight on. Plant will obviously have something to say about that if Canelo gets past Billy Joe Saunders in the first place. But we know that Canelo, certainly in the short to medium term, is on this mission to unify, become the undisputed champion at super middleweight. It's an intriguing fight, and nothing about this week's festivities, if that's what you want to call it, the press conference, the head-to-heads and so on. Saunders is no-showing one of them, and the haranguing from members of Saunders' camp towards Canelo's team in the hotel lobby. None of that's really changed my opinion on the fight. I think Canelo's far too experienced at the highest level to be unsettled by those sort of shenanigans. I think when they get in the ring on fight night, maybe it's annoyed him a little bit, it'll give him a little bit of extra motivation, but I don't think it will throw him off what his game plan already was, and he'll have several game plans, I would imagine anyway, as will Saunders. But I don't think what's gone on fight week will have a major impact, as I don't think the size of the ring, there was a big dispute about that earlier in the week. Saunders apparently wanting a bigger ring, unsure what was in the contract, but promoter Eddie Hearn found a compromise between the two, and it will now be a slightly bigger ring than was first planned. But I don't think that will make a massive difference either, because if Saunders is going to win this fight, and I said on Twitter the other day, I'm sick of people saying, well, if anyone can beat Canelo, it's Saunders, or Saunders certainly got the tools, all of that. He's got the style to beat him, but not outright picking him. I think, be a bit more bold, make your pick. If you think Saunders can beat him, say so. If you think he's got a good style to match up well, but you don't think he's got enough to win, say that. But, I think there's a lot of people, particularly in Britain, boxers, fans, pundits, who don't want to, offend a fellow Brit in picking against him. But I think Canelo is the favourite for a reason. And I think Saunders, despite the size of the ring, if he's going to beat Canelo, and that, he's not the biggest puncher in the world, Saunders, particularly not at super middleweight, would have given him a bigger chance of hurting Canelo, even though it seems unlikely at middleweight. He's going to have to win on points in Texas, where Canelo is going to be incredibly popular. It's not going to be easy. We've seen Canelo get the benefit of close decisions in the past. And if he's going to do it, he's not going to be able to do it for the whole fight on the back foot. Now, he will have to move laterally, he will have to use the ring, he will have to use his evasive skills to get out of the way of Canelo's shots. But the most important thing, if he's going to win rounds rather than just give a good account of himself and go the distance, is he's going to have to counter punch effectively. So there will be times when he has to stay in the pocket, use his fast hands and fast feet to get in and out, and give Canelo something to think about, change up the looks. Obviously, Saunders is a southpaw, maybe he could switch on occasion, but also just generally, switching from head to body, different angles, different ways of luring him in, setting traps. I think all that's incredibly important. And I think what we will see on Saturday night is two very high level operators with great boxing IQ trying to pit their wits against each other. I don't see it being this kind of war or especially physical battle. I think it'll be more a battle of the minds. And I think we're going to see, Saunders was a great amateur. No one's managed to find the solution to the problems he sets yet as a professional. But he's not fought anyone even close, I think it's fair to say, to the level Canelo is currently operating at. His best win is either Andy Lee, who was world class when he won his first world title, and he beat him relatively clearly. But Lee maybe towards the end of his career at that point, and maybe not quite in his prime. And then you've got Chris Eubank Jr., who he pipped on the cards for British, Commonwealth and European titles. I was there that night. Really, really good fight to watch. But Eubank Jr. has probably improved since, and it's still debatable at this stage whether he is genuine world class. Probably not quite yet. He hasn't proved that yet. So there's Saunders' two best wins. I know people point to David Lemieux, and that was certainly his best performance. But I'd say, in terms of what they've gone on to achieve since and the times at which he fought them, I wouldn't say that's his best win. Just his best performance and best to watch. Completely dominated him using all the skills, footwork, and intelligence we've come to expect from Saunders. And he does seem to rise to the occasion. His best performances have come against his best opponents. And when guys come in, like the Argentinian guy that he fought on the YouTuber undercard, where he was really struggling and then found the stoppage right towards the end of the fight, he needs to be motivated, I think, and feel threatened and feel up against it to really give his best displays. And there's no question, most people would say he's up against it versus Canelo, who went up against Callum Smith, another unbeaten super middleweight champion from Britain at the end of last year, and made it look easy. It's fair to say. I know Smith injured his arm early in the fight, and that kind of helped his cause at all. But Canelo, going up against a man much taller and rangier than himself, just dictated the pace and the distance and how the fight was fought. His ring generalship was superb. The way he manoeuvred Smith into position for his shots and just kept him guessing, kept him on the back foot for the majority of the fight. Just really impressive. And he's beaten the likes of Triple G, of course, first time contentiously or very contentiously. But other guys he's beaten relatively comfortably, the likes of Danny Jacobs, Sergei Kovalev, people like that. So we're talking high level operators, and you can pick apart his record as you can most fighters. You could say, well, Kovalev didn't have a lot of rest after the fight of Anthony Yard, turned that around pretty quick. Also towards the end of his career, outside the ring problems. Danny Jacobs, probably struggling with the weight when they fought, has since moved up. You can put asterisks next to a number of wins on any fighter's record, but Canelo has regularly fought quality opposition and been beating them. And since Golovkin, no one's really pushed him that close. Now, I know there's this school of thought that Saunders has a really, really good chance, or as good as anyone else, because he's a southpaw, he's slick, he's fast, etc., etc. And Canelo's struggled in the past against guys like that, the likes of Austin Trout, Erislandy Lara, Floyd Mayweather, although there's only one Floyd Mayweather. Less said about him this week, the better, although I'm sure he'd prefer it the other way. And I get that, but Canelo's a different fighter from he was. We're talking about the lessons from the past that people keep invoking are actually the distant past, it's fair to say. And I think Canelo, his footwork especially, his feet are a lot faster than they used to be. He's got a lot more variety to his game. His shot selections just got better and better. Fast hands, physically strong. I think super middleweight's the best weight for him at the moment. I think light heavy was maybe a bridge too far, even though he got a very impressive win. I think middleweight was a real struggle for him to get down to at this stage. And I think super middle is just perfect for him, which is bad news for Saunders. And as I've already said on Twitter earlier this week about people kind of sitting on the fence while giving Saunders praise but not quite picking him, I'm not going to sit on the fence for this. I feel Canelo will come out on top. I think Saunders will give a good account of himself. I think he'll cause Canelo problems, particularly early on when his feet are moving fast and he's using the whole ring, the bigger ring. I think Canelo will catch up to him. I think he'll set his own traps. I think he'll counterpunch effectively off the front foot. And I think it might take him the first 4 rounds or so to get to grips with Saunders' style and also to land sufficient shots, particularly to the body, to help slow Saunders down. But I think as the fight moves into the second half, I think Canelo will take over. I think Saunders is very proud, and I don't think he'll just look to survive, but I think his output will diminish as the rounds go on. And I think Canelo, I don't think he'll stop Saunders. I think Saunders is crafty enough, smart enough, and brave enough to last the distance, even though by round 12, I expect the fight would have gone away from him. I think if I had to kind of guess around the margin, I'd say Canelo winning something like 116, 112, 8 rounds to 4, somewhere in that region. So not close enough to call it, any sort of robbery, or it should have been a draw, but not wide enough to say he comprehensively dominated the fight either. I think there will be questions for Canelo to answer. I think it will be a tougher test than we've seen him presented with for quite some time. But I think ultimately Canelo is the best fighter pound for pound in the world. And Billy Joe Saunders may regret the last few years of his career not fighting the real kind of top tier opposition outside of Canelo to get him ready for this fight. And wasting that time to an extent, because I think maybe a couple of years ago and with the right fights in the build-up, he could have given Canelo, particularly at middleweight, an even harder challenge and maybe even have got the win. But I just think at super middleweight, at this stage of their respective careers, given the opposition they've both been facing in recent times, I do favour Canelo to come out with a victory. But I'd like to know what you guys think. Who do you think is going to win? What's the method of victory? And do you think anything that's happened on fight week changes what would have happened in the fight otherwise? It'd be great to hear your views. Obviously, there's a mountain of Canelo Saunders content on the channel, including interviews with both men, so I encourage you to watch those. And there'll be more coming on today, obviously, with weigh-in day and fight night itself tomorrow. So enjoy all of that. But if you do get some spare time between watching that stuff, please do leave your comments below and I will try and respond to some of them. Really appreciate your time, as always, and I will see you all on Monday for Reflections, 4:30 p.m, and then the next Flexpectations the following week at 4:30 Thursday. Thanks very much. See ya.